You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could
Those
change
bird
your
people
life.
were free.
If only the bird people were free. Hello everyone. I am Dungeon Master Rob.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt.
And this is Dungeon Master of None, your general interest, all-purpose role-playing Dungeons & Dragons podcast where we talk about world building and role-playing and running a game the best way that you can. And we've got a very exciting episode for you today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about running your first session, like putting words on a blank piece of paper. It's often really hard, so stick around if that's what you want to.
The first stroke on a canvas, the first words on a blank page, it is both exciting and intimidating and very, very challenging.
But first, shout out to new Dungeons & Dragons Wizards of the Coast hire, Kate Welch.
That's right.
For those of us who liked Guild Wars 2 and many of her great work on some Twitch streams and other design shit.
We're very excited. Always excited. I'll be very frank. I'm always very excited when new blood gets put in at Wizards of the Coast or any of the legacy role-playing game companies because as much as I like the old guard, they have for a long time desperately needed some new blood. So this is good news for everybody.
Our advice to Wizards, because we're sure you're listening, is do that, but like 20 more times.
Yeah, repeatedly.
Hire 20 more
aggressively
new people.
Over and over
Hire
again.
some more women. Rightly beat out any applications that may have been sent in.
Yeah, may have been sent in
from certain hosts
by me
of Dungeons Master
of a certain Dungeons and Dragons podcast. Do we want to go right into session one or?
Well,
sorry,
so there's,
dog.
I mean, since we're talking about the WotC, Wizards of the Coast, it's about time for them to release a new book in a couple months. There's a lot of speculation
That's
out
true.
there.
Thanks for the reminder.
Be?
I was just thinking about this. There's been a lot of material released. Mike Merles has been doing YouTube videos on a variety of subjects, and based on the subject matter, my speculation and the speculation of other equally interested parties is that we're looking at a Planescape book or a Planescape setting, something possibly involving the city of Sigil or any of the...
Is it Sigil or Sigil?
Yeah, now I'm thinking about it. Maybe it's Sigil.
Oh, fuck.
I don't know. I've never said it out loud. Oh, did they? Anyway.
Sigil. Anyway, one of the two. Planescape is really cool because it takes the whole cosmology that you're given in the player's handbooks and the Dungeon Master Guide, the Great Wheel, the struggles of law and chaos, and adds some really cool, more human, more relatable characters. Planescape was best in that it had these factions, philosophers with clubs, the Mercy Killers, the Sensates,
and
the Godsmen.
it has
they were so cool.
Some very cool races, the Gith and the Githyanki and other.
Planescape Torment was all time maybe best Dungeons
one
and
of
Dragons
the best, if not the
game.
best, role playing computer game. Definitely a keystone of the late 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, keep watch this space. Obviously, when they release a book, we'll be talking about it, but. Speculation is that it's going to be in that setting, which would be good.
I'm pulling for Spelljammer, but I know that
we
got
have
about
also
a
speculated.
2% chance.
Matt
of
and I are
happening.
both fans of the Spelljammer setting, but as we have discussed, it's probably a little on the weird side for this would only be their second official campaign setting, right? They've only released Forgotten Realms content so far. Am I right?
Yes,
unless you count.
But there's still no Forgotten Realms book,
right?
Other than the Sword Coast Adventures,
unless you count Curse of Strahd, which is technically Ravenloft, but it's not really different. So I do think Spelljammer would be a little bit too wacky, a little bit too bold of a move for Wizards of the Coast to do this early on.
It was not their most popular.
And of course, I'm pulling for an Eberron release sometime soon, but I would be surprised if we get that before 2019, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, so today we're going to talk about running your first session. Running your first session is probably one of the most intimidating things you can do as a dungeon master or as a player, because it is a big deal, and it can be a little scary.
Yeah, it's especially if you're not entirely familiar with your group. You have no way of knowing how it's going to go. You're throwing your players and yourself into, an entirely new situation, and you have no way of knowing how it's going to turn out. And it's very exciting, but it can also be very intimidating.
And I would say the best way to get over that intimidation is to take a step back and say to yourself, ask yourself, what do you want to accomplish in the first session? And you don't have to accomplish everything, but we're just going to go through some suggestions of things that you want to keep in mind that could be options. Pick any number of these from the list to accomplish in your first session. First up,
before we get down to nitty gritty, I actually want to ask you a high concept question. And high concept, and I think there's probably different schools of thought on this, but do you think that you want to over-prepare for your first session, or leave it open-ended in case your players throw you for a loop? What are your thoughts? Because I tend to plan out the first session, at least, in a lot of detail. And part of that has to do with, it's starting a new campaign. You've had a lot of time to think about it. But there are other ways to approach it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this sucks, and there's not a lot of way around it. In my opinion, you have to put more planning into your first session than anything else.
I think so too.
Some of the greatest advice I ever heard was the first page of your book, the first paragraph of your paper should be some good shit.
Yeah.
If it's not some of the most important things you've read, or if it doesn't have the most important material you have, then you've made a serious mistake. And I think the same applies to the first session of a Dungeons & Dragons game. So you got to put a little more prep in.
Right. Unlike a book, your players are committed and stuck there. So you don't need
You've got them for 3 or 4 hours.
You don't need like a, absolute killer hook like you might need in a novel, but you should definitely have something to get their attention, because the last thing that you want is for you to start and it to be slow and them to start getting on their phones or getting distracted, or you want from the first second to have them engage in the game and try to maintain that for the entire first session.
So the flip side of this is that you do have an important thing going for you. Is just like when you're reading the first page of a book, you're for sure have your reader, your audience, and in this case your players' attention. So even if your first session doesn't have the most mind-blowing encounter and brilliant NPCs, just because there's that excitement and players' absolute focus of something new, you don't have to have you don't have to have your best stuff there for your players to be excited.
That's right. And I do want to get to Matt's concrete examples to talk about ways to start, but that has a lot to do, that reminds me of one of the good things about your session one, is that it's a good time, or it's the most important time and probably the best time to, if you have a homebrew setting or if you have an unusual world, to try to drop some world building on them. Some exposition, which I really recommend you not do too much of, especially early on. But this can be a good time for you to have some monologue or some exposition, or write up a little bit describing the world, because your players are fresh to the game, they're excited, they're interested. You probably aren't going to have to work quite so hard to maintain their attention, especially if you start out strong. So that's a really good thing to do in your session one. But let's talk about some of the ways you can approach this. Matt, I think you have a list.
Yeah, so my list is, what do you want to accomplish? And number one on that list is the most basic thing, excitement. You want people to come back to your game, and you want your players to have fun every game. And the best way to do that is to make sure your session one has some excitement and that sort of feeling where your players are craving just a little bit.
And this has to do with your group. If you're a combat-heavy group, you might want to start in medias res. You might want to start in the middle of a battle, or they're in a dungeon, or a jailbreak, or they're going to start fighting right the second you start, or as soon as they make introductions, perhaps even before. But if you have a heavy role-playing group, the ones that like to talk. Maybe they're attending a masquerade ball or a tense diplomatic negotiation. But you want to tailor your session 1 to your group, to what they're going to find interesting. And most games are going to have a little bit of everything, a little bit of exciting, NPC dialogue, a little bit of combat, but feel free to take the lay of the land and find out what your players are interested in and adjust accordingly.
Right. It's okay to just ask them, hey, everyone, how do you want to start? Do you think it would be great to be in a dungeon right away? Or would you like to do a little more talking in character first? Or, do you just want to jump straight into exploring the wilderness? So ask your players what they want. And Robert's point leads into the second thing on my list, is your first session should try and accomplish a bit of tone setting, a bit setting the tone for your campaign, right? If it's going to be a campaign about high intrigue, there should be some intrigue. If it's going to be a campaign about exploring an uncharted area of space, you should maybe be landing on a brand new planet.
That's exactly right. And if you know the direction that you want your campaign to take, then this is pretty easy to do. And a great place to start with this is to look at any of the published campaigns. All the published campaigns take this very seriously, and they make sure that the first session really establishes for the players what kind of game they're going into. Curse of Strahd is a great example for this. There is a high horror, creepy, kind of dungeon crawly. It's an independent adventure, Death House, but it's meant to serve as an intro to Curse of Strahd. And there's murders, and there's ghosts, and there's gothic horror of all sorts, and it does a great job of establishing what kind of campaign Curse of Strahd is.
Right. And the great thing about Death House as an intro to Curse of Strahd is your players know exactly what the tone is going to be for the rest of the game. They get surprised by things they interact if they haven't played a gothic horror game like this, but they know, this game's going to be about dealing with ghosts, cursed things, the supernatural, things that go weird for a reason we can't figure out yet.
That's exactly right. And we keep bringing up Eberron because we both run games in it, but Eberron is a high adventure, a pulp setting, and so most of your session 1s are going to involve a robbery or a skycab chase, or
the players come across a dead body.
That's a classic one, a really good one, because it's influenced by
dame in
lore.
trouble.
That's right,
walks
a dame in
into
trouble.
your office.
A body, a mystery to solve,
a treasure map. So set the tone. Set the tone.
And if you're running your standard Lord of the Rings Forgotten Realm high adventure or high fantasy setting or campaign, and you just want to start in a tavern where they meet a mysterious dark stranger or something like that, or literally just have drinks together and are approached by King's bounty hunter who wants their help with something, that's okay too. You don't have to craft a fully original session 1. In fact, if your session 1 follows a bunch of tropes, that's totally fine. That may even be the best way to do that if you have depending on the campaign that you're running.
Right. And the last thing, and this might be the hardest one I would add, that you want to consider accomplishing in your session 1 is making sure that every person, right, maybe not every character, but every player has something meaningful to do or interact with. And this is less in the planning and more in the execution, right?
Yeah.
You want to really set, and this is advice for every DM, every session, to make sure that people are involved up to the point that they want to be involved. Some players don't want to be too involved in a game. They're more spectator type people, but you want to make sure that they get to spectate in the way that they want to, and that their character feels part of the group, and that the players who really love talking to NPCs or doing things or opening that box, that they get a chance to do those things.
That's absolutely right. And most of your session 1s are going to involve a at least brief moment where you just set the players loose and have them talk to each other. And inevitably, somebody is going to talk less, and somebody's going to talk more, and somebody's going to enjoy that part a lot more than the others. But what you do from there is what's important. And this is going to involve being familiar with your players and with their characters and designing encounters or situations where they can use the best of their abilities. Most of your players are going to know what they're excited about, and it shouldn't take a whole lot to find out which player is excited about the skills that they have, and which player is excited about the combat, and which player is excited about being able to talk to people. And so you want to try to steer the game in a way that hits all of the major points, like Matt said. And this isn't too hard to do in a session 1, and it's one of the reasons why... Well, it is hard to do in a session 1. It's one of the reasons why sessions 1s are both very exciting and very nerve-wracking. If you do it well, then it ends up being, a great time for everybody, and everybody comes back excited. But it can drag, it can be burdensome, it can be complicated. So that has to do with what we talked about earlier, preparing adequately for your first session.
So the best way you can overcome this fear is if you're making characters in the same night you're starting, right? Making sure that players get a chance to introduce themselves to one another. If you've done it the week before or the night before or over email, to make sure that when you sit down that players have a chance to share who they are, why they're here, and why they're part of this campaign. And then you definitely need like that hard transition. Before we were talking about playing a role-playing game, and now the game has begun, right? Our story begins. Once upon a time, you awaken and see, right? You're walking forward and you begin to smell the smell of cook fires in the distance. Campfires in the distance, right? You gotta say, hey, here's this hard transition. And so now I think we should talk about what's the very first thing what are some options for the very first thing that can happen once you make your players make that hard transition, and now we're playing a game.
Right. Most session 1s are going to follow at the very beginning basically the same format, which is the players meet and then something happens in a very broad sense. But the way that you go about that can take a number of different forms. We talked about this a little bit.
Right.
Before.
You want me to give my first example,
yes, give us an example
of ways the first one, the oldest trope, maybe not the best one, but not a bad one, is the group of players are approached or are meeting with the quest giver. So way to start one is the quest giver. And I would say it's my least favorite. I've certainly done it enough, but the players sit down or are approached or ushered in to a fancy place, a dingy tavern, and there's someone who's gonna talk to them.
And almost every experienced DM and player hates this trope, or is at least very tired of it. And there's a reason for that, and that's because it's kind of boring, and everybody's done it a few times. But if you have new players, or if you're not entirely sure about where your campaign is going to go, there's absolutely nothing wrong with leaning on this. And what's good about it is that it takes a lot of the complicated motivations out of getting your players to do what they're supposed to do. They're sitting somewhere, they've come together, somebody needs them to do a job. They're being offered money. I suppose that if you have a particularly difficult group,
welcome to the City Watch.
That's right.
New recruits.
That's right.
You're going to go into the bad part of town. Some of you aren't going to come back.
The king's got a bounty on knoll furs. That's 10 gold pieces of fur.
Right. This is the problem with the quest giver is your players can like see the floating yellow question mark.
But
above.
a lot of players will like that, or at least will appreciate the simplicity, especially if they're new. If you have a lot of players who are video game players first and are trying out role-playing games for the first time, maybe you should have yellow exclamation points until they get more comfortable with, not having, boundaries on their play. This is, again, experienced DMs and experienced players are going to be bored by this, but, there's a lot of new players coming into Dungeons & Dragons, and it's just about getting them to start and getting them to go on the quest. So, yes, it's boring. Yes, it's cliche. Yes, it's very gamey, but it's a perfectly viable option depending on your group. So, what's something a little bit more advanced, Matt? Let's step it up a notch.
This is more advanced, and this one's probably my favorite.
Your favorite.
Option number 2 is the new map, the open-ended area. You say to your players, here is an area. Maybe it's a town. Maybe it's a building. Maybe it's an entire solar system. And say, here you are. You're all together. We've probably established why you're friends, and this is a place you can explore. And I take this from one of, I think, the best adventures for new players by the original D&D man himself, Gary Gygax, The Village of Hamlet.
It's a great one, and it requires a little bit more prep work on your part and a little bit more buy-in from your players. But if they want to be a part of it, then it's like Matt says, a really great and exciting way to start a campaign. It, unlike your railroady exclamation point above a quest giver, it immediately provides more options in an interesting way that's going, especially I think, challenging to experienced players. This is how most of my campaigns that I've played in have been for the past, 5 years or so since I've been a more experienced player.
And just because you say, here's an open map, what do you want to do? You can still have some of the same direction that having the quest giver NPC gives you. You just maybe have to do it a little more cooperatively. You say to your players, you're all tired, you've been on many weeks travel, you're finally approaching a settlement, you guys have been talking on the road, what is it you want to accomplish? Oh, you're here to make sure that poor townsfolk are protected from evil. You're going to solve some problems. You're here to make a little money, right? You decide what it is you want to accomplish. Maybe there's some variety of conflicting goals in your group, and that's okay. And then you unleash them on the
What's really exciting about this type of play, and what's exciting for more experienced DMs and more experienced players, or just more engaged players, is that with this open-ended stuff, you can drop hooks, and your players will recognize hooks and pursue the ones that they want. And that's a lot more rewarding, I think, as a DM, than just having somebody approach them and say, go on this quest. You leave clues, or, you have people talk to them about something interesting, or they find a hint of something old that they need to investigate. And then the players decide, we are a party that wants to go delve into this ancient temple, or we are a party that wants to go help this village that's under attack. And that is such a great way to play, but you can't always rely on your players to do it. So that's one of the reasons why you might want to fall back on different, more railroady example. But I like Matt's, open-ended map a lot. It's a great way to play.
I love just saying, and this is, it definitely helps to have a map, right? Remember, as a DM, you're always the eyes, ears, and nose of your players, right? Mm-hmm. You control what goes into their senses. And so when they approach a village, you can tell them, there's a warm, inviting inn. There's a church on top of the hill. There's some poor-looking farmsteads on this side. There's a brewery over here, right? There's a big grove of trees that seems unnatural here in the middle. There's a big forest and hills over to this side. And so they know, these are the options that I see in here. This is what I can go find out. And as they talk to people, keep it simple for yourself. Chart out a little flow diagram of Node 1, arrive at the village. Node 2, investigate the church and talk to the priest. Node 3, talk to the druid. Node 4, go to the inn. And then, the inn, you're going to find out that there's a group of monsters in an abandoned moat house outside the village.
That's exactly, yeah. I think that's, for me, the most exciting way to start a campaign. I love the open-ended nature of it. I love having the options. I love being able to decide with the group where to go.
And if you want to do this, I have no better advice for you than to buy the Village of Hamlet module. I think you can download the PDF from Wizards of the Coast, read through that, even if you're not going to use it, and say, this is how you can make a huge open-ended area that has plenty of options for quest, intrigue, people who aren't what they seem.
Okay, so other examples. I have a couple, unless you have...
Well, category 3 of ways you can start the game is in media res.
Okay.
In action breaks out. You guys are somewhere, and then boom, shit is hitting a
This
fan.
is my favorite as a DM to start with. And the reason why it's my favorite is because I love my players and I trust them, but I want to give them as little time as possible at the very beginning to waffle or to, mill about or go investigate shops. I want them to immediately, I guess it's sort of like putting them in a crucible. Immediately throw the party together and have them solve a difficult situation or deal with an attacking force or try to escape from prison or whatever. I just think it's the best way to immediately create a sense of group cohesion and to find out what everybody is capable of. I also think that players enjoy being tested right away, and I think that it also is just like a very exciting way to start a campaign. And I tend to run high adventure action campaigns with lots of, big flashy set pieces. So this is a good way for me to, like we said before, set the tone for my campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm running a session 1 next week, and for one of my games, we are definitely starting in media res. What's an example of a great fight or action scene? It doesn't have to be combat, right?
That
you've
so
used.
In my Eberron, my Sharn campaign, all I asked of my players is that they have a reason for being in Sharn. Is that, why have you come to the city, and you're in the city? And then as soon as, we established that, why they were there, I had them, serendipitously end up in the same public area, which was then attacked by a group of Warforged under the command of the Lord of Blades. And they had to immediately defend themselves and work together, and then immediately afterwards defend themselves from the Sharn Watch, as that had to clear their good names of being involved with the attack on the square.
Right. This is similar to what I consider the ultimate opening to a campaign, so terrorist of the Lord of the Blades attack, which is the 9/11 opening.
It is the 9/11 opening.
Players, it's just a calm Friday morning. Yeah. You're in World Trade Center 2 when all of a sudden a 9/11 happens.
Yes. And that's a classic. And it's a great way to get started. And it sets a good pace for the campaign. It gets people's blood pumping and presents an immediate problem for them to solve and a challenge for them to overcome.
Right. I have done a going with pulp adventure like Eberron. My players were all in the House Kundric bank, and a bank was being robbed.
That's a great one.
Had to decide what they wanted to do. I would have been happy if they had helped the people rob the bank and say, hey, we'll get you out of here for a cut of the thing, or they ended up killing the bank robbers.
Which is a perfectly normal way to go about it. I think this is, I'm trying to remember, I think this is one of the examples that's in one of the original Eberron books, but a classic for Sharn is that a body falls from the sky, or, falls off of a bridge or from somewhere higher up, and the players, if they're interested, and they should be if they're in that campaign, are compelled to find the killer, which leads to deeper intrigues.
And listeners can already see how these ways to start ebb and flow and overlap with each other, right? That example you gave right there, there's an action scene, there might be a chase to track down whoever threw this body off a bridge. There might be an investigation of the corpse to see who it was. There might be talking to bystanders up there. They might go up and they might find the partner of the person who was just murdered, crying as their loved one was just killed, and then this person becomes the quest giver.
That's right. And we've given examples of combats, or mostly combat scenarios, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be something that involves a lot of skill tests, like there's a fire or a natural disaster, or there's a altercation, a verbal one in between some very important people, and your players can sit back, or they can try to diffuse the situation or try to turn it to their advantage. There's a lot of one. I'm not sure if we should count this as a medias res, but there's always obviously the prison break as a great way to start your session 1. The players are in prison together and they need to escape, which involves all sorts of interesting skill checks and challenges that don't necessarily involve just violently bludgeoning your way out.
And I think one of the things we're saying is there's no wrong way to do this, but there is one thing you can do wrong. It doesn't matter if you're starting with the quest giver or action or an open exploration area of exciting possibilities, is that all of them need to center on the players, right?
That's right.
the quest giver one, right? The person is going to be talking to them, but then immediately and hopefully as quickly as possible, it turns to the players asking the quest givers questions, or the quest giver mentions some things for the characters to go do immediately, right?
And I did say earlier, that session 1 is a good time to introduce your world, but a big like rookie mistake is to spend the entire first session world building or putting out exposition or having your favorite NPC talk. What you really want to do is, like Matt said, center the session around your PCs. Give them problems to solve and challenges to overcome. Don't spend this time talking or, showing off the world that you've meticulously built or explaining your extremely complex currency system or anything like that.
Right. And I am, even though I poo-pooed it, in 2 weeks, starting a new campaign, session 1, that begins with a quest giver. But it's basically the players are like, here's the person we want you to take out. Go and do that on your own. And then it moves pretty much immediately to that open exploration of, okay, should we go find out some stuff about this person? Should we go scope out the place where they were last seen? Will we just break down its door and, throw a couple grenades in there? It immediately involves player action after less than 30 seconds.
It depends on what you're running, what you're comfortable with, and what your players like. I liked what Matt said, but we just said about centering the session on your players. The more chance they have to shine, the more chance that they have to demonstrate their character's abilities and do the things that they are excited about with regards to the game, the more fun they'll have, the more excited they'll be to come back, and the better you'll be able to set the tone and the pace of the campaign.
Now that we've given you a couple ways to just begin, let's quickly talk about what are some other goals or things you want to keep in mind for a session 1. I would say the first one that I want to keep in mind is I want to plan it so that players actually accomplish something in session 1. Nothing could be worse than giving players an open world to explore, and then 3 hours have passed, and, well, we've talked to 3 different people. We haven't quite learned anything yet. We feel like nothing's been done. The plot has moved something nowhere.
I like this too, and this is gonna
something's got to happen.
This is gonna sound a little video gamey, but I like to give them a little mini boss at the end of session 1. Yeah. I like them to meet somebody tough or scary, and then I want them to fight that person before the end. And this is very gamey and I guess kind of cliche, but I really feel like, especially since everybody's getting to know their characters for the first time and their combat abilities, and D&D especially is a combat heavy game. It doesn't have to be all combat, but I want to make sure that somebody that they're going to be able to defeat, but somebody who is at least interesting and challenging shows up, maybe bloodies their nose a little bit, and then they chase them down or they re-encounter them and they defeat them. I think that's a great way to make everyone feel good and excited and accomplished.
An immediate goal, something to accomplish.
That's right.
I would say another thing you can consider doing as a goal for your session 1 is, and this is completely optional, is you introduce some kind of bigger threat.
Oh, yes. I agree
A
with this
bigger
strongly.
thing is going on while you're doing this.
This ties into something that I wanted to say, which was that you want to leave the players wanting more. You want to whether that's introducing a bigger bad after they
D&D is a drug.
Yeah.
And
you want to get your
got to
players
give them
hooked.
that first taste.
But you want to give them a hint of something bigger. Maybe it's a big bad. You should probably, I think, at least drop a clue about who your big bad is or what it might. You don't have to like let them know exactly what they're facing, but you should have some hints. Or maybe if it's
right, it doesn't have to be the person. It could just be
Right.
the problem that this big bad is causing.
If you're running sort of an open world campaign, you want to hint at sort of the breadth and depth of that world, or some of the things that inhabit that world that are very interesting. But this was my when Matt brought this up, the number one thing that you should do is by the end they should know that there's more and have a compelling reason to go after that thing that is more. Whether that's treasure they want to find, or a bad guy they want to defeat, or a location that they want to get to.
Right. And you can scale this down, and this is my next piece of advice for a thing you can do is you can introduce them to the big threat or the biggest threat, but you could also, after they've accomplished something, give a couple more immediate goals, right? It could just be getting enough money to buy transportation off this rock, right? It could just be finding out who the person is that killed that dead body, right? Mm-hmm. It just one next thing to accomplish.
That's right. You should probably have, ideally you'll have, in addition to, giving them some sense of what's to come, some, like Matt said, concrete goals, short-term goals, as well as long-term goals for them to pursue once they come back to your session, come back to your game. I have one more thing, and this is probably the most challenging thing, but by the end of your first session, I think that you want to have encouraged the players to begin developing a sense of camaraderie, to start acting as a team. And this is not something that you can plan for or necessarily anticipate every time, but if you've planned your session one appropriately and you're responding to, how the players are behaving, then hopefully when you leave, they should feel like they're a party, and they should be excited to come back and as a party address the challenges that you have laid out for them.
Yeah, things move quicker in Dungeons & Dragons. In Star Wars, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker are not on the same side until they're out of the trash compactor an hour and 20 minutes into the movie. But in Dungeons & Dragons, your main characters need to be on a team by the end of this session if they're not one already.
Exactly. And it may feel a little bit forced, especially if you have character or player personalities that don't entirely mesh, but it's something that you should be working towards. And if you didn't get there in your first session, then you want to start thinking about ways to encourage player or character interaction that gets them working together as a team. I am going to keep coming back to this as long as we have this podcast. My least favorite thing is when you have players or characters who don't get along, or players who say, oh, my character wouldn't do that, or wouldn't be part of the party. So you want to make sure that everybody is on the same page, because fun is the players working together to solve a problem. Less fun, especially for people who aren't involved, is players working against each other to gain advantage within the party.
Hell yeah. Team games, it's a team...
It is a team game, people. Yeah. Dungeons & Dragons is a team game. Okay. What is next, Matt?
All right, let's say I'm playing a session 1.
Okay.
For 4 days from now, because I am.
Hypothetically, but for real. You're doing
I have decided that this one should start I'm going to go in media res. I haven't done that one in like 3 or 4 campaigns, so I want to do it. The immediate goal for the players is going to be, I think, finding a map or a star chart to abandoned research station.
Okay.
So here's my immediate goal. Finding an abandoned chart to an abandoned research station. They are just arriving at the main spaceport in my campaign, and I want some action to break out. What should I do?
So it's an abandoned research station.
They're all on a shuttle together.
Right, you're on a shuttle.
They don't have to get to the research station in the first section. They just want to find the way to get there.
So they're all on a shuttle, or they're all recently arrived at the dock, and... I mean, the classic is that they're attacked by space pirates, or the port is attacked by space pirates, or raiders of some sort. And I don't know enough about your campaign to work with this, but maybe the raiders have some link back to the research station in question. Maybe they have a map or star chart, or maybe they came from there. Or maybe one of them that they capture or interrogate knows something about that and tries to trade it for information once the combat, or trade it for freedom once the combat is over.
Okay, I'm actually thinking, their shuttle could be arriving at the same time that these raiders are blasting their way into the docks.
That's right.
Maybe they're already in a fight with station security.
That's perfect, yeah.
And they just stole the coordinates to this abandoned research station full of secrets. And now the problem is with that, if they succeed and they break through security, then the players will have to go track them down.
So it could be a chase or a search
or
an
investigation. They might be part. I'm thinking maybe less raiders now, and they're part of a larger criminal organization.
Even better, especially if it's one that you'd like to introduce as a recurring villain or group later on. An adversary to harry your players as they go about their business. But just thinking as a DM, I like this because you can, if you're comfortable with it, leave it variable, and either their first action can be a big combat, or maybe they don't get there in time and it can be a chase, or like we said, an investigation. They need to either strike out and hunt down this vessel, or maybe they went to ground on the station and they have to find these raiders or these criminals among the hoi polloi. But I like it. I think that it leaves you a lot of options depending on how your players decide to go about solving this particular problem, what their motivations are.
Yeah. I mean, they could be, the other thing is I need them to have a reason to be arriving at the station. And the reason might be that sort of rumors that the map to the secret research station has been discovered and they're being hired by someone to find it. And so if they don't get the map from the criminals or raiders that are arriving, they still have a reason to go track it down.
Yeah, and if your players are willing to work with you, and you say this is the hook, what is your character's motivation for being involved? Maybe it's just money. It's a mercenary campaign. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're having trouble getting your players, listeners, if you're having trouble getting your players to buy into your campaign, just say you're being paid a lot of money. Even the goodiest two shoes of a paladin can always find use for a few hundred gold pieces. Even if they're just going to take it and literally give it to the poor, everybody can be motivated by money.
And the one of the great things is you can make this more fun. You can say, hey, you guys get to found a mercenary company. You have a coat of arms and a name, and then there you go.
Well, see, now I like that idea. So if you just tell them that they're part of a mercenary company, and they've been hired to track down this map, then that opens things up in a couple of different ways.
Okay, so in my session 0, I will tell them that they all know each other and they can establish fun ways that they know each other, but they have decided to work together as a set of mercenary companions.
So now I'm getting a different thought. So I like this. So they're mercenaries. They're part of a mercenary company, newly founded, fresh paint on their shuttle or their spelljammer or whatever, and they're hired to do a job. But the job doesn't go the way that it's supposed to. It's an ambush, or the meat isn't there, or there's a collision. Something unexpected changes what should be just a routine drop into a combat. Just
that will really make my players not nervous. This is a very routine job.
Definitely.
The DM says they're like, oh shit, if ship's gonna crash, we're all gonna be spaced. If you do this,
make sure you say the words routine mission. Your players will.
This is an in and out by the numbers.
No frills, no problems whatsoever. Yeah. So
yeah. I think I'm either going to lean towards that. They've been hired for a basic job, or they're so poor they're basically taking public transportation into the main city, and the one other person who is not a player or character on their shuttle is like this fidgety frog person.
Nice.
Is like Slippy the Toad, and he's got the data stick
Slippy
with the
on
MacGuffin information, in his pocket, and he's checking it all the time. And if the players decide they want to talk to him, they can. If the players decide they want to murder him and take it, that's fine. But the reason he's nervous is he knows he's being followed, and the criminals or the raiders are waiting at the port when he gets off. So the minute he gets off, they're going to blast him. Maybe the players save his life and take him out. Maybe the players barricade the door and strike a deal. We'll give you the information for a cut of the pay.
I like that.
Something like
that. And having a memorable NPC at the beginning is a great way to start things off, even if that NPC doesn't actually survive. Your players will remember the fidgety toad. And they may even.
I'm sorry, he is a Hibbian.
Fidgety Hibbian. But they may even feel some attachment, some
race.
Desire to do right by Slippy the Hibbian. I had a
and if they want to murder him and take the information that he has that's valuable, that is also super fine.
That's super fine. In one of my campaigns, this wasn't the first session, but it happened in the first 2 or 3. And Matt played in this. I had an NPC who was technically the overlord of the players, but he was honorable and trustworthy, and he was killed in a hunting accident early on, which to my yes, a very suspicious hunting accident, but to my surprise and delight, the players really felt motivated to do right by him in his last request. And that's if you can create an NPC that the players feel attached to.
I mean, we were also, if I remember correctly, like Mamluk style.
Yeah, you were
slaves,
/servants/wards.
Wards, that's right.
But yeah, I was very happy with how that turned out. So if you create a memorable NPC, even one that dies right away, even if the players don't like it or are not particularly attached to that NPC, then they may want to know more about him or find out where they came from or learn more, and that's a great way to start a campaign.
Absolutely. All right, well, I think you've worked through my first session. I have a lot of options here as players are arriving, and I think what we've done is, instead of me having a quest giver that says, here I have in my hands a data file, the coordinates of a forbidden research station, which is gone mysteriously silent. I want you to go check it out. Now, I could have the players be ambushed. I can have Slippy the Toad carrying the information. I can have the players ask him why he's nervous, or maybe they'll choose to kill him, or maybe they'll choose to protect him and escort him to where he was trying to go.
I think it's great. I think you have a lot of options. If this is the group that I think it is, then I think that they'll respond well to this type of opening and will be able to be flexible with what happens.
Hell yeah. And if they all they all make a bad deal and they say and they all get spaced by the criminals, well, we get to have a session 1
Session 1 part 2. Session 1 Redux. I have never had my entire party get killed in session 1, but it can happen. And
yeah, no, I don't think I have either.
I have had some people die, but never.
Don't be afraid of that. Nothing makes for a better second session 1 than avenging the death of all of the players.
You should definitely tune your encounter so that that's unlikely to happen, but it definitely can happen for sure if things go wrong. All right, I think that we've definitely covered session 1. If you
go DMs and have a fun first session of your campaign. Session.
And if you have questions,
be not afraid.
Reach out to us, and yes, be not afraid.
Send us an email at dungeonmasterofnone, or add us on Twitter, dmofnone.twitter.com.
Twitter.com. All right, see you next time.